Phil made me hungry. Well, today, for those who just tuned in, we're studying the eras of the new, and not the mistakes, but the eras, E-R-A-S, of the Old Testament. And it's helping us understand the Old Testament, that it's not just a bunch of books thrown in there, that there's a pattern and a plan. And there's kind of a golden string that's weaving through here. And we've been chasing that string, started really with Seth, the child who replaced Abel for Adam and Eve. And we've been seeing that string all through the history of the Old Testament. And for those who just tune in, the eras are creation, patriarch, Exodus, conquest, judges, kingdom, divided kingdom is where we are right now. Next week we'll be studying exile. And what's interesting is today in church we sang a hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness. Next week we will see the scriptures that hymn came from, which is Lamentations. That should be a fun one to study, Lamentations, won't it? But yes, the exile, it was a bad time for those who were caught up in it. And then after exile, we have return, and then we have the intertestamental period that a lot of folks don't know too much about, and I don't either, but we'll figure it out. And that's going to lead us to Christ. And we're going to finish that up if nothing happens, if monkeypox doesn't run rampant through here. We're going to finish the end of June, these eras. July, the first week in July, we always take that week off in here. Now the rest of the church will be off the month of July of Sunday school. We don't usually do that. And if y'all want to keep meeting after that, it's fine with me. We missed so much during the COVID that I almost hate to take any time off. But we will take off that 4th of July weekend because let's face it, we all love barbecue. And then after that, I'm thinking that since we've had all these Old Testament lessons, I thought we would do the Sermon on the Mount. I mean, okay, a sermon by Jesus, I guess that's worth looking at. So we'll look into that starting the second week in July. So that's where we're going. And let's see, so today we're studying about Judah, the southern kingdom. We had the northern kingdom last week. That's Hezekiah right there, if you wonder who that is. We'll talk about him shortly. So we saw that the northern kingdom, because of their idolatry, God does not put up with idolatry. And so they were hauled off to Assyria. The ones left behind were intermarried with some Assyrian people that they put in here, and they became the Samaritans. And they were hated by the Jews, as you can tell by Scripture. And here's what's tough about that. People want to call these northern kingdom tribes, there were 10 of them, the lost 10 tribes. But apparently they weren't all lost. I imagine some of them who worship Yahweh came down to the southern kingdom. And when we look at the book of Revelation, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes were marked with a seal and were preaching during the tribulation period. Now, what's weird about that list, though, is that the tribe of Dan was left off. And the reason, I think, is, the Bible doesn't tell us, but Dan did not like the territory they were given, that they were allotted when they moved into the promised land, and they moved to the north. And also the tribe of Dan was real bad to practice idolatry, and that may be why they were left out of those 12 tribes. And Ephraim, Joseph was there instead of Ephraim, but Manasseh was, the tribe of Manasseh was. So Ephraim was involved in some stuff too, I think, that didn't make any points with God. So we see that not all these 12 tribes were gone. I mean, the 10 tribes, of course, Judah and Benjamin were in the southern kingdom, and they got to return. But the northern kingdom folks never got to return back to the northern kingdom. And what makes it hard, it's difficult, I think, for Jews to trace their lineage back to their tribe now. Number one, because of this dispersion of the 10 tribes. Number two, in AD 70, the destruction of the temple, and the records that were there got destroyed. So Jews may have trouble tracing their tribes to see what tribe I belong to. The easiest ones to trace right now, I think, are Judah and Levi. But the other tribes are probably harder because of some of these factors. Not to mention the Holocaust. Yeah.
They mixed their DNA with others.
Yeah, that's about. But do you have the DNA for Simeon or Issachar or any of those? See. So that left the tribe of Benjamin and Judah back in the southern kingdom. Here's a map that shows the splitting off of the kingdom. And so we're going to be in 2 Chronicles chapter 26 is where we're going to start. I'm letting the Bible tell most of the story because it tells it so smoothly, better than I could say it. Now, we talked about Jehoshaphat, which I think is a cool name. If I had a dog, and I don't want a dog, but if I had a dog, I might name that dog Jehoshaphat. But I'm not sure the dog will respond to that name all that well. You might have to call him Jeho or something like that, short. Yeah. But now Jehoshaphat made a big mistake. He threw his son under the bus in a way, because in order to have peace with the north, Jehoshaphat, and now he's a Southern company, I worked for Southern Company, okay? A Southern kingdom, and he might work for Southern Company, I don't know. A Southern kingdom king, and he was a good one. There were no good Northern kingdom kings, so now we're talking about the southern kingdom. And what he did was he married his son off to one of the worst families that ever lived in the northern kingdom in order to have peace, and that was Ahab and Jezebel. Somebody asked me about the name Jezebel because I mentioned about the EL on the end of most people's names is God. And somebody said, well, Jezebel has the EL. But Jezebel is not a Hebrew name, it's a Phoenician name, and they really aren't sure what it means, except they think that the Zebel part of it means exalted. So when you see the El in her name, that doesn't mean God, okay? But it's because it's not a Hebrew name. So Jehoram was the name of this boy, and then when he reigned, he was terrible. He was just like his father-in-law, Ahab. And he had a son who was killed in battle, Ahaziah, and his mom took over for 6 years. But his mom was in charge until the army killed her. they had all they could take of her. I mean, come on, she was Ahab and Jezebel's daughter. Imagine how mean she was. Matter of fact, she killed off all the royal family. She was going to wipe out the lineage of David. This was one of Satan's tricks to try to stop this seed, this part of the seed that's coming. But guess what? She missed one. A little grandson who was saved by her aunt. And his name was Joash, and he was 7 years old. He became king at the age of 7. And he did pretty good as long as his mentor was alive. He had a mentor, a priest named Jehoiada. Don't hold me to any of these names here. But when that priest died, then Joash kind of went the wrong way, like a lot of people did. And his son started out pretty good, but he got the big head, so he was killed. I'm just kind of telling you about some of these kings here. And then there's Uzziah. You're familiar with him because it was during this time that Isaiah is around, and he is a prophet in this time. And he started out good, but in 2 Chronicles 26, starting at verse 1, we're going to see what happened with him. Then all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in the place of his father Amaziah. He was the one who rebuilt Elath and restored it to Judah, and Amaziah rested with his ancestors. Uzziah was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 52 years. His mother's name was Jecholiah, and she was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Amaziah had done. He sought God during the days of Zechariah, who instructed him in the fear of God. As long as he sought the Lord, God gave him success.
Amen.
Well, he started out good. But somehow power gets the best of people. So look at verse 15. I'll try not to get ahead of myself on these slides. Verse 15. In Jerusalem, he made devices invented for use on the towers and on the corner defenses so that soldiers could shoot arrows and hurl stones from the walls. His fame spread far and wide, for he was greatly helped until he became powerful. But after Uzziah became powerful, his pride led to his downfall. He was unfaithful to the Lord his God and entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. Ooh, he went into the holy place. Who's supposed to go in there? Yeah, just the Levites. What tribe was he from? Judah. Because he's in the lineage of David, okay? Who is from the tribe of Judah. So he was not authorized to do this. In verse 17, look what happened. Azariah, I guess it is, the priest with 80 other courageous priests of the Lord followed him in. They confronted King Uzziah and said, "It is not right for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, for that is for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, who have been consecrated to burn incense. Leave the sanctuary, for you have been unfaithful, and you will not be honored by the Lord God." Uzziah, who had a censer in his hand, I think that's the thing they scooped the ashes up with, ready to burn incense, became angry. While he was raging at the priest in their presence before the incense altar in the Lord's temple, leprosy broke out on his forehead. When Azariah, the chief priest, and all the other priests looked at him, they saw that he had leprosy on his forehead, so they hurried him out. Indeed, he himself was eager to leave because the Lord had afflicted him. King Uzziah had leprosy until the day he died. He lived in a separate house, leprous and banned from the temple of the Lord. Jotham, his son, had charge of the palace and governed the people of the land. Now Jotham became king, and he did okay, except he did okay, but the people did not. They were worshiping other gods, of course, while all this was going on, his son Ahaz did evil in the Lord's sight. But finally, Judah is going to get a good king. These people off worshiping idols. Oh, here's Uzziah with the leprosy on his head. And it's funny that people can just decide, well, I think Baal is a god. I'm going to make him a god. Some of them made Molech a god. They had all these other people, and they just decided in their minds. And it's amazing how you can decide in your mind that something's right. And just to show you that we are in the deep depths of postmodernism, which means there are no absolutes. You've got males who can decide they're females, and you got females who can decide they're males. But the weirdest thing of all happened, I saw it the other day, and it happened, guess where? California. Nothing weird happens in California, I know, but they have declared an appellate court, judges, that a bumblebee is a fish. Did y'all see that? I promise. I promise. Because they wanted to get that bumblebee on the endangered list, and it had to be a fish to be there, so that you're a fish. The what?
You know how they got the bumblebee in? They didn't define what a fish is.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Some folks had a lawsuit against it, and they lost. I think the Fish and Game folks said, oh, wait a minute, this isn't a fish. So a bumblebee is now a fish.
That bumblebee, not all bumblebees.
That particular bumblebee, yeah. So that goes to show you that folks can just decide what they want to be or what something wants to be, whether it is or not. And that's really part of postmodernism, because there are no absolutes. And if you ask them if that's true, they would say absolutely.
Leave a lie.
Yeah. Now, we're in chapter 29 of 2 Chronicles. We're going to see about a good king by the name of Hezekiah. That'd be a good dog's name, too. Hezekiah.
Looks like a good Scrabble word.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that Z's a lot of points. By the way, they didn't play Scrabble back in the days of the Hebrews, in these days, because there were no vowels in Hebrew. Can you imagine playing Scrabble without vowels? That would be difficult, wouldn't it? All right, chapter 29, verse 1. Hezekiah was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother's name was Abijah. By the way, when you see that Jah at the end of a name, that's a shortened form of Yahweh. It actually should be a Y-A-H, because there ain't no J in Hebrew or Greek. But it transliterates that way somehow into English. Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done. In the first month of the first year of his reign, he opened the doors of the temple of the Lord and repaired them. He brought in the priests, the Levites, assembled them in the square on the east side, and said, "Listen to me, Levites, consecrate yourselves now and consecrate the temple of the Lord, the God of your ancestors. Remove all defilement from the sanctuary." Our parents were unfaithful. They did evil in the eyes of the Lord our God and forsook him. They turned their faces away from the Lord's dwelling places and turned their backs on him. So Hezekiah was fixing all that his ancestors had broke. And he even had them celebrate the Passover, which they had not been doing. And so look at chapter 31, verse 20. This is what Hezekiah did throughout Judah, doing what was good and right and faithful before the Lord his God. In everything he undertook in the service of God's temple and in obedience to the law and the commands, he sought his God and worked wholeheartedly And so he prospered. So if you want your nation to prosper, you follow the Lord. Chapter 32, verse 1. All right. There's trouble on the horizon. These Assyrians are kind of, that took away the northern kingdom and have their eyes on the southern kingdom. After all that Hezekiah had so faithfully done, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and invaded Judah. He laid siege to the fortified cities, thinking to conquer them for himself. When Hezekiah saw Sennacherib had come and that he intended to wage war against Jerusalem, he consulted his officials and military staff about blocking off the water from the springs outside the city, and they helped him. They gathered a large group of people who blocked all the springs and streams that flowed through the land. Why should the kings of Assyria come and find plenty of water, they said. Then he worked hard repairing all the broken sections of the wall and building towers on it. He built another wall outside that one and reinforced the terraces in the city of David. He also made large numbers of weapons and shields. He appointed military officers over the people and assembled them before him in the square at the city gate and encouraged them with these words: "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of the king of Assyria and the vast army with him, for there is a greater power with us than with him. With him is only the arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles." And the people gained confidence in what Hezekiah the king of Judah said. And so that the Assyrians had surrounded the city. They were trying to starve Hezekiah and the city out. But Hezekiah did something smart. He built this tunnel and brought water into the city. And matter of fact, it's still there. There's a picture of it. It's called Hezekiah's Tunnel. Has anybody seen it? Yeah. Yeah. I guess most anybody who's been to Jerusalem have seen it.
That's where they smuggled the ark out.
And what's amazing, well, what I read is one group started at one end and the other group started at the other end, and they met in the middle. That is amazing. I don't know how they did that. That is not something easy to do. I can't even dig a straight ditch for my flower beds. But somehow they did that. And so that tunnel is still there, and so that allowed fresh water into the city.
Then underneath the wall, I guess.
I guess it is. Well, it's way underneath the wall. I imagine it went on out
They get
into the
water
countryside.
From the lake or something up there.
Of streams, I guess.
From the pool,
Of Shalom.
that pool that's up down on the south.
Okay. Anyhow,
Bill, we heard something really interesting the other night on TBN called Watchmen on the Wall, and they do a lot of archaeology. And one of the things a teenager was going through the tunnel, I don't know how many years ago, but he reached up and he felt like the stone was marked, and they got archaeologists in there, and that was a spot where the two groups of engineers came together.
Oh.
And so we actually have it.
wow, that's cool.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know how
That's
that.
where they took the ark out of the city
Okay.
before it was overrun.
When they smuggled it,
Out this tunnel.
some people say it's in Ethiopia, but I don't know. And some people say it's hidden in Jerusalem. I don't know where it
I
is.
think the Jews have it now.
They may have it because they keep wanting to build that temple back. If they do, though, that'd be the sign of the end of the times. All right, look at chapter 32 of 2 Chronicles. Verse 18. 2 Chronicles 32:18. Then they called out in Hebrew, this is the Assyrians. If you think psychological warfare is something new, it's been around. There's nothing new under the sun, okay? Then they called out in Hebrew to the people of Jerusalem who were on the wall, to terrify them and to make them afraid in order to capture the city. They spoke about the God of Jerusalem as they did about the gods of other peoples of the world, the work of human hands. King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah, there's Isaiah, son of Amoz, called out in prayer to heaven about this. And the Lord sent an angel who annihilated all the fighting men and the commanders and officers in the camp of the Assyrian king. So he withdrew to his own land in disgrace. And he went into the temple of his God, and some of his sons, his own flesh and blood, cut him down with a sword. So he ended up on the bad side. So the Lord saved Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib, I think that's not, king of Assyria, and from the hand of all others. He took care of them on every side. And so Hezekiah became very famous after this. Big man on campus, you might say. And but then he got sick. And we find that part of the story in Isaiah chapter 38. I know we're jumping around a lot today, but you have to follow the story. Isaiah chapter 38. Isaiah is really quite a book. Verse 1. In those days, Hezekiah became ill and was at the point of death. The prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz, went to him and said, "This is what the Lord said, put your house in order because you are going to die, you will not recover." Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. Here he is. Here's a picture kind of him. And he prayed this prayer, starting in verse 3. And it's like, well, God, I know you don't have a great memory, but let me remind you of something. And that's what he's doing here. He said, "Remember, Lord, how I have walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion, and have done what is good in your eyes." And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Then the word of the Lord came to Isaiah. "Go tell Hezekiah, this is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says. I have heard your prayer and have seen your tears. I will add 15 years to your life. And I will deliver you and this city from the hand of the king of Assyria. I will defend this city. This is the Lord's sign to you, so that the Lord will do what he has promised. I will make a shadow cast by the sun go back the 10 steps it had gone down on the stairway of Ahaz. So the sunlight went back 10 steps, it had gone down." So that was a sign that this was coming true. So I guess God can move shadows whenever he wants to. So Hezekiah prayed this beautiful prayer, starting in verse 9. A writing of Hezekiah, king of Judah, after his illness and recovery. "I said, in the prime of my life, I must go through the gates of death and be robbed of the rest of my years. I said, I will not again see the Lord himself in the land of the living. No longer will I look on my fellow man or be with those who now dwell in this world. Like a shepherd's tent, my house has been pulled down and taken from me. Like a weaver, I have rolled up my life, and he has cut me off from the loom. Day and night you made an end of me. I waited patiently till dawn, but like a lion he broke all my bones. Day and night you made an end of me. I cried like a swift or thrush. I moaned like a mourning dove. My eyes grew weak and I looked at the heavens. I am being threatened. Lord, come to my aid. But what can I say? He has spoken to me, and he himself has done this. I will walk humbly all the years because of this anguish of my soul. Lord, by such things people live, and my spirit finds life in them too. You restored me to health and let me live. Surely it was for my benefit that I suffered such anguish. In your love you kept me from the pit of destruction, and you have put all my sins behind your back. For the grave cannot praise you. Death cannot sing your praise. Those who go down to the pit cannot hope for your faithfulness. The living, they praise you, as I am doing today. Parents tell their children about your faithfulness. The Lord will save me, and we will sing with stringed instruments all the days of our lives in the temple of the Lord. And then Dr. Isaiah, you know Dr. Isaiah, in verse 21, Isaiah said, prepare a poultice of figs and apply it to the boil, and he will recover. He will recover. So that's what happened. And Hezekiah was a great king, except he did something stupid. I mean, just plain stupid. Imagine you've got somebody who you don't know, but he's coming to visit you. See, he's coming to see you because he heard that you've been sick. And so when he gets there, you go ahead and show him, because of the pride, you're so proud of your stuff, you show him your coin collection, your stash of cash where you keep it,
Gold.
where you hide your gun, what?
Gold.
Yeah, your new big screen TV, and the code to your alarm system. Now that sounds like a smart thing to do, doesn't it? That is basically what Hezekiah did, because this man was from an unknown place at this time called Babylon. And it's the Babylonians that eventually are going to come down and sack Jerusalem, and they know where everything is. So look at Isaiah chapter 39. At that time, verse 1, Marduk Baladan, son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent Hezekiah letters and a gift, because he had heard of his illness and recovery. Hezekiah received the envoys gladly and showed them what was in his storehouses: the silver, the gold, the spices, the fine olive oil, his entire armory, and everything found among his treasures. There was nothing in his palace or in all of his kingdom that Hezekiah did not show them. Then Isaiah the prophet went to King Hezekiah and said, what did those men say? Where did they come from? From a distant land, Hezekiah replied. They came to me from Babylon. The prophet asked, what did they see in your palace? They saw everything in my palace, Hezekiah said. There is nothing among my treasures that I did not show them. Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord Almighty. The time will surely come when everything in your palace and all that your predecessors have stored up until this day will be carried off to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says the Lord. And some of your descendants, your own flesh and blood, who will be born to you, will be taken away, and they will become eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. The word of the Lord you have spoken is good, Hezekiah replied, for he thought, there will be peace and security in my lifetime. He's saying, well, everything's going to be okay for me. Too bad about these folks later, but I'm going to be okay. So Hezekiah, here's a couple of verses about pride. C.S. Lewis said pride was the biggest sin of all. And pride could keep people from salvation. But in Proverbs it says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. And with humility comes wisdom. And 1 John chapter 2 says, for everything in the world, the lust of flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life come not from the Father, but from the world. So pride is not a good thing. Then Hezekiah had a son named Manasseh. And he was bad he was really bad. It's amazing how one generation can go from such goodness to such badness. One generation. And Manasseh put all the stuff back that Hezekiah had torn down. And so he really helped seal the fate of Judah. Manasseh also, he is the one in the valley of Hinnom, which the Greek word is Gehenna. You familiar with that word? That's Jesus talked about. That's hell. That was Jesus' description of hell. The valley of Hinnom is where Manasseh sacrifice his son. And that Valley of Hinnom kind of became a cursed place after that. Anyhow, it became like a garbage dump. I understand. And so now Manasseh, the king of Assyria, I think it. No, let's see, who was it? Hauled him off. Yeah. They hauled him off. They stuck a ring in his nose and hauled him off like a horse, I guess. But then he later kind of repented and came back and ruled, and he straightened out a little bit. But he had a son named Ammon, and he was bad. He only lasted a couple of years. The only bright spot was King Josiah, who rediscovered the law and got things going, but it was too little too late. Israel had already sealed their fate. The last 4 kings were evil. 1 was sent to Egypt, 1 died in the siege of the Babylonians, and the last 2 were sent off in captivity to Babylon. So Jerusalem would fall in 586 BC. And so next week we're going to go into the era of the exile. And it's just a 1 lesson era. So, just to recap, we started with Seth. We followed this golden string through all these people, even to David. David went to Solomon. Solomon to Rehoboam. Rehoboam, Jehoshaphat, and we followed to Hezekiah. And that may be the last king I follow it with. We'll pick out somebody else during the return. And so this golden string is still weaving through history. And it all started in Genesis 3:15 when God said, somebody is going to bruise your head, Satan. What?
Crush your head.
Yeah.
Crush your head.
Yeah. Or it depends on what translation you look at. Yeah. So Jerusalem will fall, the temple will be destroyed, people will be hauled off. The only people they would leave behind are just the old and the folks who could hardly make it. And it stays that way for 70 years. And then the people come back.